A castle has stood at the heart of Windsor for nearly 1,000 years. Davina's come here to meet architectural historian Simon Bradley.
I've been finding it hard to marry up the idea of him being a stonemason in this portrait of this quite smart man. So I was wondering what sort of... I mean, stonemasonry, it's a very physical job, isn't it? What would he have been doing?
Well, he starts doing fairly rough work. And in fact, the very terrace we're walking on, one of his early jobs when he was working at Windsor, was reconstructing it. So you may be walking on James Bedborough. But that's fairly...
Do you know what I think's amazing? I think it's amazing that you're an architectural historian and you know my great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Well, he's not just a mason, he is the mason. He is the king's master mason, so he's got the plum job.
In 1820, George IV inherited the throne and promptly ordered an extravagant makeover of the castle inside and out. It would take more than a decade and cost the country over £1 million. It was the perfect chance for James Thomas Bedborough to showcase his skills.
The Windsor Castle of today that the state visitors come to is basically George IV's.
That's so gorgeous, isn't it?
It is, it is. George IV is a showman, you know, he wants things to look impressive.
So
now,
lovely.
I can show you a picture.
Oh, yes, please.
These are the architect's drawing, but look up top left, because that's what we're looking at now.
the whole new...
That's the round tower, one of Bedborough's
Wow, so
really
the whole,
major
all
works.
that stonemasonry on the top. The flowery bit... Flowery?
Yep.
Sorry, but you don't get it called that very often.
The battlements and matriculations.
Thank you, the
they're called.
matriculations.
It's the two stories below the battlements.
Oh, really?
And that's pretty well the junction between
so
the old
that's
work and the new work.
enormous.
Yeah. It's a sort of like a child's dream of the Middle Ages.
Yes.
Or a Hollywood dream
Yes.
of the Middle Ages.
From his early days as a humble apprentice stonemason, James Thomas Bedborough had risen to the height of his craft, working on the most prestigious building project of the age. And beyond the castle walls, new opportunities were opening up.
So James does a lot, but he doesn't stop in Windsor Castle because he carries on building into Windsor Town. As it starts to grow, Windsor spreads out from the historic part, pushing west, and Bedborough gets in there. The key area is along Claremont Road and around Clarence Crescent.
Yes.
This is part of a big development.
So he basically bought this piece of land.
He buys the land
develops
it. Yeah. And there's more.
Yes.
There's Grove Road. There's a terrace of houses there.
What, the whole terrace?
Yeah, yeah. But in terms of scale,
It's not
as grand as
bit.
Clarence Crescent, Dorset Road, Trinity
Right.
Place, Claremont Road, Clarence Road. That what became known as the Bedborough Estate, in fact.
Did it?
At least within Windsor.
Really?
Very, very large-scale development there. And you can compare it to the size of the town.
So, I mean, he really was an entrepreneur.
Yes, yes.
I want to go and see it.
In the late 1820s, Britain was in the midst of the Industrial Revolution. Opportunities abounded for ambitious property developers, and Windsor, which for centuries had been little more than a garrison town, was booming. James Thomas Bedborough seized the chance and set about developing a whole new neighbourhood, known at the time as the Bedborough Estate.
This would be it. These roads up here. It's amazing. It's an enormous area. It's very posh, actually. Very smart. Very lovely. I walked round the corner and there I was faced with a whole area that one of my ancestors built and developed. I mean, was he one of those developers that everybody's up in arms about, or was it a popular thing, or... I mean, how did he suddenly go from stonemason to developer? It's a big jump. And where did he live? I know that Upton Park fits in here somewhere.
Davina's meeting English heritage historian Stephen Brindle in the heart of Bedborough's development.
It's really lovely.
It is lovely, isn't it?
It's so beautiful.
It is. Well, he was a really good builder who really knew what he was doing. He's an ancestor to be proud of. He's the sort of man who'd have got up at dawn, 6 days a week, worked 14 to 16-hour days. That generation who built Britain of the Industrial Revolution. We've got his obituary, and you can find out lots more about him here.
Wow! Look at that obituary.
Well, they thought very highly of him.
So he died in 1860, in his 73rd year. Alderman and magistrate.
Yeah.
So he was a magistrate.
Well, he'd be mayor.
He can't have been mayor.
He was.
He was mayor of Windsor.
He made himself a big man round here. If you read
He
on.
was mayor of Windsor.
Oh, yeah.
Although the symptoms of declining health had become painfully apparent in his countenance for some time past, Mr. Bedborough continued to attend to his magistrate's business. He was a legend, wasn't he? So he was sick, and he still went to work.
Yeah.
United to a wife of a most amiable and engaging disposition, one whose character was well calculated to cheer and sustain a young tradesman in his progress through the thorny path of life. Isn't it beautifully written? This lady predeceased her husband by several years, leaving behind her large family. Nearly all his speculations at this period proved eminently successful, and he was now the largest house proprietor within the borough.
He proved himself as a reliable and excellent craftsman, I would guess.
Yes.
And he'd have got a very good reputation in this quite small community. And as he worked his way up, he'd have made connections in the town's professional classes, and those connections then would really have helped him as he built his business.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
I was very worried that he'd been underhand and devious. And I'm so pleased that he sounds as lovely as I dreamt he would be.
Yes, I'm sure he was.